When the idea of that evening was first brought up, it didn't feel dangerous at all. In fact, it sounded almost boring in the safest way. Just dinner. Just another couple. People we had recently started spending time with, people who felt familiar enough to be comfortable but new enough to still feel interesting. My husband mentioned it casually, the way someone does when they don't want to reveal too much enthusiasm. He said they were fun, that we'd been stuck in routine lately, that maybe a change of pace would do us some good. I agreed without hesitation, because at that moment, the word fun meant nothing more than conversation, laughter, maybe music playing softly in the background, maybe a glass of wine at most. I had no reason to think it meant anything else. But there's a strange way tension can enter a room without knocking. You don't see it arrive. You just feel it settle. The moment they walked in, something shifted. Not attraction exactly, not desire in the obvious sense. It was energy. Charged. Curious. A little too relaxed, a little too familiar for people who hadn't known each other that long. The kind of atmosphere that quietly invites people to lean just a bit closer to boundaries they never planned to touch. Dinner flowed easily. Conversation bounced around the table. Stories were shared. Jokes landed. Then someone turned on music, and the mood loosened even more. Plates were cleared, glasses were refilled, and laughter grew louder. What started as background noise slowly became the center of the night. Then the games began. Simple at first. Light-hearted. The kind of games people play when they want to extend the evening without admitting they don't want it to end. And then, almost without warning, the questions changed. It began as a joke. Someone said we should be honest tonight. No filters. No pretending. Everyone laughed, but it was the kind of laugh people use to hide nerves. The kind that fills the silence before anyone realizes what they've agreed to. Small confessions came first. Harmless ones. Old crushes. Embarrassing memories. Regrets from years ago that no longer carried weight. It all felt safe. Almost therapeutic. But safety has a way of fading quietly. The questions grew more personal. More specific. Less general and more directed. I noticed how often eyes lingered. How answers were held just a second longer than necessary. I noticed the way my husband listened, the way he didn't look away when the attention shifted toward us. No one touched anyone. No one said anything you could clearly label inappropriate. And yet, the atmosphere had changed completely. Sometimes things begin to unravel long before anything physical ever happens. Sometimes it's a look that lasts too long. Sometimes it's answering a question more honestly than you should. Sometimes it's allowing a feeling to exist instead of gently putting it back where it belongs. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. And in that moment, I realized the night had quietly crossed from harmless fun into unfamiliar territory. Nothing dramatic occurred. Nothing you could point to and say, this is where it went wrong. And yet, something had shifted in a way that couldn't be undone. When the night finally ended and we said our goodbyes, the silence in the car on the drive home was louder than the music had been earlier. My husband kept his eyes on the road. I watched the streetlights pass by. After a long stretch of quiet, he finally asked the question that had been hanging between us. Did that feel different to you? I didn't answer right away. Because sometimes the truth doesn't arrive instantly. Sometimes it takes its time, like a wave slowly reaching the shore. When I finally said yes, we both understood exactly what that meant. Nothing happened. And yet, everything almost did. That's how nights like that work. They don't always cross the line. Sometimes they just show you how close you're willing to stand to it. The next morning, the house looked the same. The furniture hadn't moved. The walls hadn't changed. But the atmosphere felt different, like the echo of a conversation that never technically happened. My husband made coffee quietly. No humming. No jokes. Just silence. I replayed the night over and over in my mind. The laughter. The looks. The questions that had gone a little too far without ever fully crossing over. I wasn't ashamed of what we did. But I was deeply unsettled by what we almost did. That's the part people don't talk about enough. The danger isn't always in action. Sometimes it's in discovery. Discovering parts of yourself you didn't expect. Discovering how easily curiosity can feel harmless until it isn't. Later that day, my phone vibrated. A message from the other woman. Simple. Casual. Honest. She said the night had been interesting. That she hadn't expected that kind of energy. My stomach tightened immediately. She wasn't exaggerating. And she wasn't wrong. Before I could even think of a response, another message came through. She suggested we all do it again sometime. That was the moment everything became real. Not dramatic. Not scandalous. Just an open door, quietly offered. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. My husband saw the notification light up. He didn't ask to read it. He didn't need to. We looked at each other, and in that look everything was understood. The night hadn't been harmless. It had been a test. A test of boundaries. A test of honesty. A test of who we were when temptation arrived gently instead of recklessly. That evening, we talked. Really talked. The kind of conversation couples have when they realize the line they thought was far away is actually right under their feet. There was no shouting. No blame. No accusations. Just honesty. We admitted the tension. We admitted the curiosity. And we admitted that curiosity, if left unchecked, could become something far more expensive than a moment of excitement. That conversation saved us. Not because we made rules. Not because we promised perfection. But because we were honest about being human. We never met with that couple again. Not because they were bad people, but because we finally understood ourselves better. Temptation doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it sits at your table. Sometimes it laughs with you and asks questions that seem harmless until they're not. That night didn't destroy our marriage, but it exposed its weak points. It showed us how easily people can step closer to the edge when curiosity feels innocent. It reminded us that nothing happened can still change everything, because emotions don't need proof to leave a mark. One day, my husband said quietly that he didn't want to find out how far we might really go. And I agreed. We chose to step back before the line disappeared completely. Since then, we've been more careful with what we call just fun. More honest about attraction. More protective of the trust that holds everything together. Because relationships rarely break in one dramatic moment. They fracture slowly, in small, almost invisible ways. That night almost went too far. And sometimes, almost is enough to remind you what truly matters, and how easily you could lose it if you stop paying attention.